Hi, I'm Conrad Marshall, host of Good Weekend Talks. After a short summer break, the podcast will be back in January with plenty of exciting interviews booked in the calendar already. But for now, enjoy one of our most popular episodes from 2024 and don't forget to subscribe, rate and share. Hi, I'm Conrad Marshall, and from the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age, welcome to Good Weekend Talks, a magazine for your ears featuring in-depth conversations with fascinating people from sport and politics, science and culture, business and beyond. Every week you can download new episodes in which top journalists from across our newsrooms talk to compelling people about the definitive stories of the day. In this episode, we speak with Tim Minchin. The Australian performer has just penned his first non-fiction book, You Don't Have to Have a Dream, Advice for the Incrementally Ambitious. Drawn from 3 of his iconic graduation speeches, the book is an idiosyncratic celebration of life, art, success and kindness. A rallying cry for creativity, critical thinking and compassion. And hosting this episode, exploring an array of Minchin's own challenges and triumphs, heartaches and epiphanies, is the Sydney Morning Herald culture writer, Thomas Mitchell.
And Good Weekend Talks welcomes Tim Minchin.
Yeah, I feel welcomed.
You feel welcome. You look welcome.
Thanks.
I hope you feel welcome.
I'm faking welcomeness. I actually feel really put upon.
Uncomfortable.
Yeah, uncomfortable.
Yeah, maybe
I wish I wasn't here.
It's the intense lighting.
Yeah, totally. It's quite full on. It does feel like you might be trying to get state secrets out of me or something.
I know. It's almost got a bit of like a 60 Minutes vibe, the way it's lit or something.
Totally.
Well,
I don't know what I've done. I've been a bad builder or something.
Yes, correct. We're here with dodgy tradesman Tim. Okay, so I was curious. You have these different selves. They wear many different hats: musician, writer, comedian, actor. And now we're kind of looking at the publication of your first non-fiction book, You Don't Have to Have a Dream, and a live tour to kind of accompany the release. I mean, you've always been a busy guy, but do you think your relationship with work has changed? Are you afraid of being not busy?
I'm disinterested in being not busy or uninterested in being not busy. I have a very keen sense that it's an incredible privilege to be, and I'm not just checking that box to acknowledge it. I mean, I literally, I was heading for and would have been happy as a sort of, a guy who wrote music for theatre in Perth and, maybe did some Shakespeare in the Park. That was kind of where I was until I was almost 30. And then I ended up somewhere very different. And I never felt like I had a right to be an artist. I never thought anyone owed me a career in the arts. And so that hasn't gone away for me. I'm like, oh, I get to make stuff. I kind of owe it to myself to work 8 hours a day. Who gets to sit on their laurels or rest on their laurels? Why would you when you love your job? That said, I've been waiting for the burn to lower a little bit, for the gas to be turned down on the fire that drives me to work so much. And I feel like I might be getting there. It's something to which I aspire, to be a bit more chill, because it does come from a place of, I need to prove myself, and it gets unattractive. And I've known artists and people in their 70s and 80s who are really unchill about what they've achieved. They're like chasing their biggest hits, and I'm talking big names, they just never let go of the kind of need to have another hit or prove themselves or get richer or be more acknowledged. And that's a real warning to me. That's not a vibe.
No, that's a losing game, I think. It is funny though, because our relationship with work is so different these days. And, you talk about it in the book that if you, do what you love, then it never feels like work. And that's the thing people say. And it's very true. But of course, the reverse is true. Like even, especially in the creative industries, like labors of love are still laborious. And, I was curious, when do you feel like you're most like in work mode? Like when are you really like, I'm grinding?
That's an interesting question. I'm not very good at grinding. I'm good at getting very focused when I need to. I really do enjoy all the different aspects of it. The hard thing is the laborious thing is when you're having to promote stuff, and it's just like, now I'm off social media myself. It's a real pain, but I have to generate these videos so they can go to my assistant, so they can give them to, it's like that stuff's a bore. And then there's the pain of deciding what to do, the difficulty of what to say no to. That's the hardest bit of my job, which includes things like, can you please do a video for my husband who's a fan and he's dying of cancer? And if I said yes to all of them, I mean, they don't all get to me because my managers just can't send them all on. I can't handle that. I don't do all them, but I can't do all them.
Yeah.
And the ones I do, they hang over me. I'm like, I've got to do that. Whether it's a video for that primary school in Poland who are doing a version of Matilda, and I promised I'd, whatever.
Yeah, you say yes to one and then the floodgates open.
Anyway, so my answer is I don't feel like I grind. When you're on tour and you've done 20 shows and you just feel like your body wants to break down because you're singing for 2 hours a night, and it's just the adrenaline highs and the trying to sleep and the changing cities and the hopping on planes, that feels like work. Not the shows. The shows always feel pretty good, nearly always, but the getting to the show feels like, okay. And then I have to do stuff. I have to say to myself, this is like, this is like the 9th K and a 10K run, come on. Like I have to talk to myself like a sports coach.
I was going to say, how many like pep speeches have you given yourself in the mirror somewhere in the middle of nowhere where you're like, you can do
get
this.
Up there. And you do lose. Yeah. And the other sort of interesting thing about being a performer is your confidence is always a kite, that you've got on a string. Like I don't swagger through this career.
Yeah.
I have my self-assuredness and I have my self-belief, but I don't swagger through this life. I'm like, it's just constant. I say it in one of the speeches, the waves of self-loathing and self-doubt, self-love and self-doubt or something, it's just, that is what being an artist is. I'm amazing. Look at all these people standing up and clapping me. I hate myself. I don't know how people can look at my ugly face. It's just, it does it to you.
Yeah. I mean, I guess
it's like a drug.
That's the changing nature of fame and the work that you put in, the grinding or the non-grinding in your case, but has brought you a very incredible level of fame. And I know that you've spoken about your, I guess, shifting relationship with fame, and sometimes it can be difficult and you resent it or you crave it, as any, I think, creative does. Would you be sad if you woke up tomorrow and no one knew who you were?
Yeah, I think I would. And I don't think that's attractive either, but I just have to admit.
But that's a conditioning, like.
Mm-hmm. It's, and I don't know, just to sort of slightly ameliorate your assessment of my past reflections on fame, I don't think I'm very famous. I think I've done really well to be in a place where it's comfortable. Like, and I don't look like Brad Pitt. I was never going to be an A-lister because that sort of fame usually comes with aesthetic gifts. But I'm happy with my level of fame and I don't resent it, partly because I'm very lucky to have a personality that finds if someone wants to come up and talk to me, I just very rarely feel anything but love. But I'm a extroverted, chatty pro-anthropist. I don't mind. And that's just luck, right? Some people find it really, really hard and really invasive. But without a doubt, being important is a drug. Even if you deep down don't think of yourself as important or special, or if you're like me and you don't really believe in free will, so you don't believe you should be credited for anything, you just, when I walk into a room, in some places, it's meaningful to others and you can't not unknow that,
Yeah.
That said, it does make, if you think about it too much, it could be problematic. If I think about how people are approaching me all the time, I just don't think about it. Yeah. I don't care. People can take me as I come and I take them as they come and I just don't think about it.
It can kind of break your brain. And I guess that the interesting thing is that you do learn that everything is obviously fragile and you touched on it before, what happened with larrikins. And I was curious, the book is called You Don't Have to Have a Dream, but people do, of course, naturally. And I imagine if you were to say, these are some dreams I have, like that is, for anyone that's ever thought about writing or having a career, like that's a version of the dream, what you were doing over there, and it fell apart, and that would be so devastating. And I guess off the back of that, you moved home to Australia, and you kind of, I guess, come back here to pick it up and see what things look like. And I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like I've watched interviews with you and read interviews with you, and it felt like, as well as being naturally devastated, there was some anger attached to that whole thing.
Oh yeah, super chippy.
And how does that feeling evolve? I guess, where does it sit with you now? What happened there?
Well, of course, the great thing about time passing is not just that it heals wounds or the slings and arrows less keenly felt, but it's that your understanding of your experience is averaged out. So your failures are mitigated by your successes, and you can look back and go, oh, I had my ups and downs, and in general, I've been unbelievably lucky. And so just distance gives you a better view of the average, right? There was a lot going on at that period when the film was shut down and stuff. I think just moving, and I just, I'm not sure if I was devastated. I was definitely cross, because I make my work with a particular, slightly Pollyanna-ish, deliberately Pollyanna-ish view. I just go, I'm going to throw myself into this, and I'm not perfect. Like I don't always make great art, and I'm not the greatest writer in the world, but I really go hard at trying to make it good in my own. And I'm not really interested in what the market wants or what producers think, unless they've got an amazing list of credits. I'm like, I don't know, you don't seem like anyone who's made a good story. I just going to not listen to you. And so I didn't really suit LA, but I still think, I wonder if that movie will have another chance to rise again. I just needed to get on with more work, and I got to write Upright when I got back with my beautiful friends, and then be in it. And that was the most amazing way to write a show which is about dealing with your stumbles and about how your errors, like literally the final monologue of Upright season 1 is, sometimes you make mistakes and they can be accidentally beautiful. I mean, I literally just wrote any wisdom I could pull out of that experience into the next thing. And that in itself was successful and something I loved, and that did most of the work.
Yeah, because I mean, I guess that any type of like feeling like anger or what you could see as a professional failure, obviously was out of your control, but the end goal for anyone is to pull something out of it.
Totally.
And you talk about failure a lot in the book as well. And it's crazy to me reading this story about, and I obviously know you're aware of this, but like, Billie Eilish at 12 years old, going to see Matilda and thinking of herself like as a failure because her career hadn't matched that yet, and she's 12, and we know how her career turned out. She's quite talented.
Not yet. We don't know how it turned out.
Well, yeah, she's doing so far so good.
Long way to go. But
do you think we are living in a time where like ambition has morphed to the point where, because of I don't know, the crazy world of social media that has really kind of rearranged our brains so much, that we're living in a world where ambition, even when you're a young person, is like something that skewers your worldview already?
Yeah. I mean, I'm afraid I'm one of those people that think social media is a genuine poison that's going to do huge damage to the generation it's all in the data. Anyone who's still going, is it social media that caused the massive rise of depression in young people after 2012? Anyone who's, I just think, and if 2 years from now we have another chat and you're like, oh, you were wrong about that, it turned out to be the water, or, whatever. I just think you're bonkers. I think social media is poison on so many levels, and that's a whole chat. But without a doubt, one of perhaps, okay, so everyone's like, what is the mechanism by which social media causes depression? And there's so much. I think it's just too much information in our brains. Didn't evolve to have 70 different inputs, whether they're positive or negative. It doesn't matter. We're not meant to scroll. We're meant to, anyway. So that's the kind of macro thing. But what do the Buddhists say? What does everyone, Jesus Christ, everyone who's ever had any wisdom said about happiness, which is that that if you compare yourself to others, you're going to be miserable. Or the Buddhists say, unhappiness is always either wanting something or aversion. It's either desire or aversion, rather than the lesson of my second musical, Groundhog Day, which is that everything you need to be happy is in front of you now. Now, obviously, there's exceptions and people who are oppressed and people who are suffering. But for most of us in Australia, most of the people listening to this podcast, everything, give or take trauma and disease, it's available now. You don't need more to be happy. And actually, you can't. And the Buddhists say change is the only constant in the universe, and you have to get to at peace with change. What does social media do to your capacity to not compare yourself to others, to not want to be different? What does my son who plays guitar, he looks at some 10-year-old, his algorithm throws him guitar and he just thinks he's terrible. And it's just like, well, I can't explain to you why it doesn't matter that kid's got chops you don't have. That's not what it's for. That's not what art is. It's nothing to do with that. I say in my book, you bring everything you are into everything you do. Art is not whether you've got the chops of a 10-year-old, but how do you tell a 15-year-old that? How do you tell a 15-year-old girl that having folds of fat on her body doesn't make her a failure compared to every single frickin' body she sees? How do you tell a 40-year-old journalist that because they haven't won the prize or they're not on a holiday in Fiji or they don't feed their kids gluten-free stuff out of a burlap, what's that word? Sack. Whatever. Like, you're just constantly pummeling your brain. Yeah. It's like what advertising started doing to us. We went, oh, hold my fucking beer. Hand me the baton. We'll do it to ourselves.
Yeah.
We're going to just brutalize ourselves.
We have really turned it up to 11. That whole comparison is the thief of joy. And it's like,
we're just like, do we not take any lessons? Like, can we learn nothing?
Yeah, because it is very funny. The advertising boom, triggered all these issues, and then we were just like, okay, well, maybe I'll just put that in my pocket and have it on my person
and look at it 100 times a day.
And the thing I think is particularly toxic, I have a very young son, too young to be on social media, but
is he though? Well, we can get him on.
He's 18 months old. Yeah,
come on,
soon. But even that, I think I already have pre-anxiety about him being on it, and the thing I think is particularly. I notice it a lot working in this industry where, engagement with stories is so big now and what goes on in the comment section of articles and, of course, social media is sometimes makes you want to cry.
And you bastards report it as news and just make it worse. You're reporting what is said in comment sections. That we should have seen that as a bad idea.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a self-fulfilling.
It's where life happens, yeah.
It is where life happens, I guess. And I was particularly interested in this, in the book you talk about that we don't listen to one another. It's an idea that, people have been saying for a while, but especially I thought was really interesting that people don't say often, which you spoke about, is self-interrogation. You say we must think critically and not just about the ideas of others, but be hard on your beliefs. And that's the thing I think people just don't do anymore because we really exist in these echo chambers. And occasionally when you do drift out into a different chamber, then it's just people yelling at one another. And do you worry that we are in a time where self-interrogation has just been completely benched in favor of validation?
Yeah, and and everyone sees it happening everywhere else. If you talk to any, I would consider myself a left-leaning progressive, social progressive. I mean, I suppose I'm a lefty, right? But am I because I find the way my ostensibly progressive friends act kind of appalling because I don't think it's progressive to call anyone you disagree with a fascist or cut or deliberately switch off your empathy for someone because they're a race or gender that you see as an oppressor, not an oppressed. To group people, it's happening all the time. It's this thing that people call wokeness, which is such a gross word, and I wish we could replace it because what it is performative righteousness with so much of what goes on online is performing your righteousness to your own people. And I know this because I did it for years. And I didn't realize I did it until I stopped and went, why am I posting about Trump and Brexit? And whose mind am I trying to change? I'm an artist. Put it in your freaking work, bro. I got off Twitter years ago because I had a sort of Damascene moment of realizing that
Was there a particular thing that triggered the moment?
I think I guess it's my job to think about things and not everyone has time to think about things. And I started going, is this helping? Really, I think perhaps being there, watching America get more and more divided, the extremification of every viewpoint and the means to an endism, the idea that we progressives and, nationalistic right-wing, populists and all that mob, they all think, it's means to an end. Look, I know you shouldn't necessarily hate people because they're white or Jewish or, but this time it's okay because we're going to get this done. I mean, it's just mad. But this performative righteousness, it really puts people off. And what I realized is no one's got an intention except to show their friends that they are doing right think, not wrong think. I mean, I these days when I talk to my friends, I go, tell me something you disagree with your mates on. And they all have one. You wouldn't know it though. You wouldn't know it because everyone only uses social media to show their adherence to a set of values that is a representation of what they see as their tribal identity. And I'm saying everyone, I'm using big, obviously not everyone does, but there's two problems. One is there's no utility, you have no intention. And I talk about this a bit in the book that our job as artists is to put good ideas into the world.
Yeah,
and good
valuable
ideas. Yeah, valuable ideas. And valuable ideas, the difference between a valuable idea and a tweet that you've chucked up at 12 o'clock at night is art could be defined as somewhere where you've put some fucking effort in. And it's really about effort, about self-examination. Is this a good idea? What is its utility? How can it, whether it's to entertain or to I've done some really agitating things. I've been part of massive public shaming with Pell and stuff I reflect on now, and we can get to that. But the other thing that we don't examine is not just is there an absence of utility, but what are the possible unintended consequences? And now we have 10 years of data, 12 years of data, and the unintended consequence is a divided nation like America. And my question for Australians listening to this is, you want to follow them? And what are you doing? You, not them, not those other people, those assholes, those fascists, those libtards, whatever, not the other people, you. What are you doing to make sure our country doesn't follow America?
You obviously just mentioned the Pell video and the song.
Back in 73 when you were living with Jerry, is it true that you knew but you chose to ignore? Or did you actively try to keep it buried? And years later, when survivors, despite their shame and their fear, stood up to tell their stories, you spent year after year working hard to protect the church's assets. I mean, with all due respect, dude, I think you're scum, and I reckon you should come home.
It was this kind of huge cultural moment in Australia, broadly lauded as hilarious and important and, poignant at the time. And I was curious to get your 2024 feelings on it, because that was something that people got it really left a mark. And I would say, as again, broadly, people were really behind that. But given it's clear that you've, with time, had time to think about the impact of these things, and how do you feel about the imprint that video left on the popular culture in Australia?
Well, I can with most things, take 2 views or 5 or 7. I mean, I think there's a role for satire and there's a role for art in politics. In my defense, or to my credit, I worked incredibly hard to make sure all I talked about in that song, by the way, people remember it as me accusing him of being an abuser. Like, people have a massive false memory about that. The people on the right, they're like, are you going to apologize to Pell for calling him an abuser? I'm like, I didn't. It was nothing to do with that. This is before all that. I wrote it about him not faking a sickie to not come home to face the Royal Commission. And I had people very close to the Royal Commission, and I had read a lot of data on how meaningful it is for people who are victims of systemic abuse to have an apology, just like we apologise to Indigenous people. Like, it's hard to figure out the utility of saying sorry to Indigenous people, but at the time it was unbelievably important to people who were there, Indigenous people who were there. It was very important that Pell came back. And I got a sense that, and I knew every flight he had taken in the previous months. I knew he had only seen a doctor in the Vatican. I wasn't pissing around, and I was reflecting stuff that was already written in the media. I was making it funny, accessible, and I was giving abuse victims a voice, right? And much more than anything, I was raising money to fly them over to see him, and that's what we did. And it wasn't my idea, the charity bit. I was very lucky to be able to help. To steelman the opposition argument, do I think public shaming is the right mechanism for change as a rule in a post-social media world? And I think probably we should be very, very careful with public shaming as a rule, because why are you the moral arbiter? I mean, the moral certainty of some people online, you're like, yeah, I know, they go, it's not cancel culture. It's holding people to account. I'm like, who are you, kiddo? Like, maybe you're holding people to account. Maybe you're getting it wrong. You're a child. Like, you're just part of a mob doing moral justice through your lens, right? So I have a problem with public shaming. Cannot be the primary mechanism, because it will it'll come for you. I wrote about it in my song 15 Minutes of Shame. They'll turn on you if you stumble. It'll come for you. Not just you, straight white guy, not just you, rich colonialist, but you, non-binary, whatever, you, lesbian, whatever.
Yeah. In conjunction with the book, you're touring in conversation with Tim Minchin. And in a flip side, in a really beautiful way, you get to go and just talk with someone else in front of people who their lives are all over the place, from every single demographic and socioeconomic background.
Or people who can afford to spend $100 to listen to a pontificating buffoon on stage. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll start a Kickstarter for those who can't make it.
We do some things. Yeah.
But then, I guess it's almost like you get to go out and remind yourself of what connection actually looks like. You obviously tour the world playing music. I'm not sure if music is a part of this show.
No.
So it's a very different experience for you, but kind of a beautiful way to be okay, this is actually what it's about. I
think so. And I do, my last tour, my Unfunny Evening, it was really me talking about my thoughts. And I did talk a little bit about division, and I have a song called In Defense of the Fence, which is an old pre-Twitter song, but it couldn't be more poignant now.
We divide the world into terrorists and heroes, into normal folk and weirdos, into good people and pedos, into things that...
When I go on this book tour, see, if you've listened to this podcast, I think I speak thoughtfully and clearly, but you can hear me. I have a penchant for passion. I want to get going. I want to get on one, right? And I want to grow up into someone who can reflect more who I actually am inside my head, which is a purveyor of doubt. I really believe more than anything that you should examine your ideas. And the best way to do that is take the thing you believe and then get the opposition's argument and see how good you can make it. So that's what I referred to the term steelman. You steelman the opposition's argument. So if you think, I don't know, Trump is a buffoon, the only way to figure out whether that's a good opinion or not is really have a look at what people like about him and just try and see the best in him, right? I haven't done that, but I should, right? I should. And the other thing I want to do is follow my advice from the sort of most well-known speech from my book, which is define yourself by what you love. Because when we live in a time like this where we're constantly bombarded with the pain of the world, which is interesting to live in a time when everyone's more aware and therefore maybe more empathic towards people that they otherwise wouldn't have known so much about, except maybe a 2-inch column on the international pages of the paper. Sure, we thought that would be good. I think what it causes is incredible friction and dissonance. And Gen Z, statistically, that they're really struggling to feel optimistic or happy. And I want to do better at modeling for my children and my fans and whatever. Define yourself by what you love. There's so much beautiful stuff in my life. And I love art and I love friends and I love, discourse and conversations, and I like talking to people who are different from me, and and so I would like to try and get better at talking to the positive of all this rather than trying to unpack the problems.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's balance there, and as a journo, that's you got to wonder about that too.
Yeah, of course.
But that's what I want to do with my book tour. I want to mature into like a big hippie love machine.
Perfect.
But also my critical thinking, the basis of my worldview, a humanist critical thinking worldview is, I'm going to keep pushing it. It's still the right kind of framework.
Yeah, you can be like a kind of long-haired Anthony Robbins, just touring the country.
Oh, could I be a long-haired who? I was going to say Peter Singer. Or, yeah,
Someone like that. Look, you turn 50 next year. I don't want to prematurely age you, but we've kind of been talking about this, I guess, in terms of like, are you one for milestones? Like when you turned 40, were you like, is this where I want it to be? When you turn 50, will you take stock, or will it just be like, happy birthday, Tim, what are we doing today?
I'm not very stock takey because my expectations for the sort of life I might have between the years of 2004 and 2008 blew it all so completely out of the water. Like I just never, ever thought I would get to play 2,000 seaters, let alone 10,000 seaters, or be Judas in an arena, or have a Broadway musical, or any of this, write a freaking book, or talk to you right now. Everyone says that, but I didn't, that's not what I thought. That wasn't my dream. So if I died now, apart from the fact that it'd make my children sad, I mean, I got nothing I need to do. I mean, I'm so far past my hopes. I'd like to become a force for good ideas. Yeah, I want to keep honing that. But I've just renovated a home, which I've never done before. That was really, really fun. And I've got this nice marriage and these kids, and I'm all right.
I loved the like in the part of the book, because especially given that you are talking to, in this particular speech, a group of university students who tend to define themselves, we've all been there, myself included, when you just like, you smoke and you drink and you don't give a fuck about anything, and there's not a chance you would be caught dead going for a run, and you really impress upon them the need to like treat your body with respect and, like play a sport, do yoga, pump iron, like take care of your body. And I think, are you a runner these days? Are you one of these people that runs a lot?
Yeah, I'm a bit more Jimmy because it's better for the various pains and problems I have. I'm a HIIT class guy, but I run. Today's a running day, and I'm not going to get to run. I run, 2 or 3 times a week. Try to run 2 or 3 times a week.
And is it funny when you talk to these students? Do you think like, can you see the blank faces being like, I can't believe Tim Minchin is telling me to do a HIIT class right now?
I know, right? But that's everyone's always, people always just want a simple version of you. And when the couple of times I did really get in trouble with the right-wing press in Australia because of Pell and still call Australia homophobic and stuff. And there's a big percentage of Australians for whom I would just always be that, and still if I ever post anything online, someone will go, this guy's not even funny. And I'm like, I haven't been a comedian for 10 years. Like, what did you think of Upright? And part of that is like your long hair, bloody stoner. And there's still, sorry to do that voice, it's kind of condescending, but there's still this idea that an artist is a type. I'm like, oh no, I'm a massive footy fan. I like played second grade, first grade adjacent hockey until I was 27. I still run 10Ks, twice. Like I'm a jock. Yeah. And I was a sporto way more than I was a muso at school. Like I was obsessed by sports.
On the album Apart Together, your album, there's a song, If This Plane Goes Down, and you sing, remember me as someone who tried to find the balance between self-loathing and pride. And legacy is a funny thing, it's something people do get hung up upon. Do you ever give thought to how you'd like to be remembered?
My position, I have another song called Talk Too Much, Stayed Too Long, and it says it says I don't give a shit how I'm remembered. Because I'm pretty logical about that stuff. Who cares? I'll be dead. And then every now and then I think, imagine if, you see someone who at 70 something gets shamed for something they did, and you realize that they're going to go to their grave being known as the person.
The Don Burks of the world.
Yeah, that's right. And you think, you don't want that. but I don't, there's nothing coming out, you know. I don't have any dark secrets. I've lived a fairly straightforward kind of life. But do I think about legacy? I don't really. I really like people. I really like that people are interested in my work. I want to always be getting better at whatever it is I'm turning my hand to. I really see that's something very much that is a personality attribute of mine, is that people go, why are you doing that? And I'm like, oh, because I can get better at it. You know, when I did my solo piano tour just gone, I'm like, I think I want to get better at piano and singing. I'm going to do 80 shows. And so it's just progress. And I want to keep getting good. And then when I die, I don't know, burn it. Burn it all, baby.
Burn it to the ground. And
yeah, just sing When I Grow Up in primary school. I'll be happy. That's the great thing. My legacy will be Matilda, and that's the best fucking thing.
When I grow up, I will be tall enough to reach the branches that you have to reach to climb the trees you get to climb when you're grown up. When I grow up, I will be smart enough to answer all the questions that you need to know the answers to when you're a grown-up.
Tim Minchin, thank you for joining Good Weekend Talks.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Good Weekend Talks is brought to you by the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscriptions power our newsrooms. To support independent journalism, search Subscribe Sydney Morning Herald or The Age. And if you enjoyed this episode, please remember to subscribe, rate and comment wherever you get your podcasts. This episode of Good Weekend Talks is produced by Chi Wong. Editing from Conrad Marshall. Tom McKendrick is head of audio. And Katrina Strickland is the editor of Good Weekend.